Actually, I want to start at the end of chapter 3 on page 65, where Hightower had, the gossip was that he had murdered his wife, had his wife murdered rather, for the insurance money. And page 65, but they told Byron how as soon as his wife was dead, the people seemed to realize all at once that the Negro was a woman, that he had that Negro woman in the house alone with him all day, and how the wife was hardly cold in the shameful grave before the whispering began, about how he had made his wife go bad and commit suicide because he was not a natural husband, a natural man, and that a Negro woman was the reason. And that's all it took. They continue on, but meaning when this was Hightower's past, and I believe it's 20-some years ago, I had mentioned the KKK had started up, revived itself in the 30s and maybe 30 through 35, but they were against not only blacks but Jews and Catholics and any type of foreigner, they would say. Of course, Yankees, of course, all Yankees. But they had kidnapped Hightower and strung him up, beat him, almost killed him. He'd been tied to a tree and beaten unconscious, page 66. But he refused to tell who had done it. The town knew that that was wrong, and some of the men came to him and tried again to persuade him to leave Jefferson for his own good, telling him the next time they might kill him. But he refused to leave. He would not even talk about the beating. He didn't report it. Just an example of Negro sympathizers getting punished severely. And, you know, I don't know if sympathizers is the right word, but Yankees coming down to help. But Hightower stayed there. Again, there's this inner theme about his grandfather was a Civil War vet and killed on his horse. So I just wanted to mention that, and throughout this book there's a lot of sympathy for the Negroes and that. Sounds weird saying Negroes and that, but just put yourself in the time of the 30s. Okay, chapter 4 is Byron Bunch and Gail Hightower sitting at Hightower's across from one another on a desk. Not on a desk, across a desk. They're talking about the fire again. And how Joe Christmas was back. He lived out there. They boarded in the house? No, in the old nigger cabin in the back. Christmas fixed it up 3 years ago. He was living in it ever since, with folks wondering where he slept at night. Then, when him and Brown set up together, he took Brown in with him. Set up meaning with the moonshine business. And all this N-word cabin, and meanwhile, Joe Christmas is having a sexual relationship with Joanna Burden, which we'll get to, but that's all gone as the scene is taking place that I just read, but we don't know exactly what happened and won't know until the middle of the novel. We don't even know Joe Christmas's background yet, but we will soon. Joe Brown, Joe Christmas's roommate, who is Lucas Birch, Lena Grove's baby daddy, sperm donor, who she's looking for still, he is a drunken loudmouth. He likes to get drunk and talk about him and Christmas's moonshine and business, and how Christmas has a gun, and how they're living out there, and and Byron Bunch gets wind of all this, and he's trying to help Lena. He's fallen in love with Lena. He doesn't want to tell Lena that, you know, who she loves and wants to have a life with is, you know, a drunken loser, just to put it mildly. But here's a nice passage. Hightower is talking to Byron, page 76, about why he's so worried about Lena and Joe Brown and the whole mess. I still cannot see what you have to worry about, Hightower says. It is not your fault that the man is what he is or what she is. You did what you could. All that any stranger could be expected to do, unless... Now, here we go, and opposite Byron, Hightower does not think love. He remembers only that Byron is still young and has led a life of celibacy and hard labor, and that by Byron's telling the woman whom he has never seen possesses some disturbing quality at least, even though Byron still believes that it is only pity. But here ensues Byron getting Lena on at his boarding house with Mrs. Beard, and he's talking about how she's waiting, Lena is waiting for her husband to arrive, and just all these lies and just white lies, trying to save her. Oh, the humanity of it. Here on 77, they're talking about Joe Christmas and the fire, and it's let out the information that Ms. Burden got hurt in the fire. How got hurt? How bad hurt? I reckon not bad, maybe not hurt at all, just folks talking like as not, like they will. Oh, now we know that she's dead and practically decapitated in there. We don't know who did it yet. Continuing on. Like I said, there's no spoil alerts here, and I would like a discussion about this if there's any interest. Again, Brown shooting his mouth off the night before. They buy a car. I don't know if it's coming up or around here. On page 83, Byron is doing the talking again with Hightower. He's telling a story. Often in Faulkner, the narration is like that. You know, you hear the show don't tell axiom all the time, but sometimes you do tell. And by telling, you show, often in flashbacks. So on 83, it comes out about Christmas. They look at one another. What is it? I haven't heard yet. About Christmas. About yesterday and Christmas. Christmas is part nigger. About him and Browning yesterday. Part Negro, Hightower says. His voice sounds light, trivial, like a thistle bloom falling into silence without a sound, without any weight. He does not move. Continue on. What about Christmas and Brown yesterday, he says? It was yesterday morning. There was a countryman coming to town on a wagon with his family. This is how Brown heard the story now. The countryman is the first man who discovered the fire with his wife, and he investigated it and found Brown drunk inside the house, and the fire was in the kitchen. Now the man was going upstairs, and Brown tried to stop him a couple times, but the man persisted, and he's the one who found Joanna Burden. She was lying on the floor. Her head had been cut pretty near off. A lady with the beginning of gray hair, page 85. So here in that one sentence we get the truth about her being dead, how gruesome it was, and a lady with the beginning of gray hair. Now that's an important detail that's going to come up again. Brown is a major snitch. We're getting the story from Byron again. But Brown, there was a reward. The nephew of Joanna Burden would pay $1,000 reward for who done it. And Brown goes immediately to the sheriff, snitching out Joe Christmas, thinking he'll collect $1,000 reward. That's the type of twisted mind he has, wet brain he has. Just lives for the moment. You could say that about Joe Christmas as well. So Brown tells the whole story. They half believe him, half know that he's a wet brain lunatic, and they lock him up in jail over at night for safekeeping. Page 91, that Christmas is Black, it comes out again. This time it's almost better to be a murderer than to have N-word blood. Like, where does it begin? Brown's just talking away. That's right, he says. Go on, accuse me. Accuse the white man that's trying to help you with what he knows. Accuse the white man and let the nigger go free. Accuse the white and let the nigger run. Nigger, the sheriff said. Nigger? It's like he knew he had them then. There's nothing they could believe he had done would be as bad as what he could tell that nobody else had done. You're so smart, he says. The folks in this town is so smart. Fooled for 3 years, calling him a foreigner for 3 years. When soon as I watched him 3 days, I knew he wasn't no more a foreigner than I am. I knew before he even told me himself. And them watching him now, and looking now, and then at one another. You be careful what you're saying. If it is a white man you're talking about, the marshal says, I don't care if he is a murderer or not. I'm talking about Christmas, Brown says. The man that killed the white woman after he had done lived with her in plain sight of this whole town, and y'all letting him get further and further away while you're accusing the fellow that can find him for you, that knows what he done. And this is Byron Bunch telling Hightower the story of Brown and the sheriff. It's Faulkner at his best. And we're at the end of chapter 4 now, where they lock Brown up again. It's right queer. Kind of a murderer trying to catch himself to get his own reward.